Hi, my name's Leo, and in this video we're going to be taking a closer look at this device here, the Samsung Galaxy A07, which is Samsung's latest budget offering that released about 2 months ago. So in this video we're going to be taking a closer look at the design, testing out the camera, testing out the performance, giving my overall thoughts on this device and helping you decide whether or not you should pick one up in 2025. Anyway, let's see what comes in the box. Galaxy A07. Here it is. Here we have it in green, which looks pretty snazzy on the box. Slim design, 7.6mm. Powerful performance, we'll put that to the test. 6 times OS security, what does that even mean? Not a whole lot on the back apart from soy ink. Let's open this phone up using the sharp edge of this graphics card. This is trickier than I anticipated. Surprisingly similar packaging to the A16 that I unboxed in my last video. Oh, there it is. Nice shiny green smartphone. It almost looks Christmassy. What else do we get in the box? A SIM card ejection tool, a USB-C cable. Nice, you can never have too many of these. And finally, a quick start guide. In terms of colours, it comes in 3, a light grey, a dark grey, and this green option, which is definitely the best colour. The back of this device is almost holographic, a bit like a Pokemon card, and it's made from a material that Samsung calls glass fibre reinforced plastic, which is basically a way of saying fancy plastic. Another design change on the back of this device that differs from last year's A phones is the design of the camera module. As you can see, it's all one unit as opposed to last year's individual camera circles. This is the A16. But in my opinion, I actually prefer last year's design. I don't know why they changed it. The top of the device just has a microphone hole. Moving to the right side, there is a volume rocker as well as a power button that doubles up as a fingerprint sensor. In my testing, it's been fairly fast and accurate. No complaints there. The bottom houses a 3.5mm headphone jack, which is nice to see. You don't see this on a lot of smartphones in 2025, and I still like to use wired headphones. Moving along, there's the USB-C charging port, but unfortunately no fast charging. And finally, a single bottom firing speaker. This is what it sounds like. A message to the seller. As soon as I got a reply, I jumped in my car and drove 50 minutes down the road to pick it up. And then I lugged this dinosaur of a PC inside. And here it is. This is what £15 worth of PC. And over on the left side of the device is the double SIM card plus micro SD card slot, which is a lifesaver because this thing only has 64 gigs of storage. In the hand, this device feels quite light, but that's to be expected. The whole thing's made out of plastic. But that's not a bad thing. It is a budget device and it feels strong. It's not like I can bend it and there's no flex. It doesn't feel particularly cheap or flimsy. Come closer, I've got a little secret. It's also IP54 dust and splash resistant, so it should survive a day at the beach. Just quickly, if you are enjoying and you want to see more, be sure to drop us a like and consider subscribing. I make tech videos like this, and I'm on the road to 12,000 subscribers, which is absolutely amazing. Anyway, let's go on with the video. Moving over to the front of the device, we have a 6.7-inch IPS display. Now I have some interesting opinions on this display, but first let's have a look at the specs. So it's a 6.7-inch 90Hz IPS 720p display with a max brightness of 800 nits. So let's start with the positives. 6.7 inches is a good size. I do like larger smartphones, ideally a 16 Pro Max. It's now a 90Hz display, which is an improvement over last year's model, and it has an 800 nit peak brightness, which is okay for outdoor visibility. Now 720p is a low screen resolution in 2025, but surprisingly it's not as bad as I thought it would be. When I first unboxed this phone, I didn't even know what resolution the screen was, and I looked at it and I was like, this is 1080p maybe? And even looking at the screen now, knowing that it's 720p, it doesn't look terrible. It's definitely not as sharp as my iPhone screen, but that's to be expected. So the resolution I wouldn't say is a bad thing, and the fact that it's lower resolution will save on battery life and performance. So yeah, definitely don't get put off by the fact that it has a 720p display. It actually looks fine in terms of resolution. So now let's move on to the aspects of the display that I don't like so much. And they mainly boil down to the fact that this is an IPS display, and for the last 5 or 6 years, all the displays on my smartphone and TV have been OLED, so my eyes have become accustomed to OLED displays. And this is always the case. Whenever I look at an IPS, I'm immediately drawn to the flaws. So these flaws aren't specific to the A07's IPS display, but it's things like poor viewing angles, not very vibrant colours, poor black levels, and the worst culprit of all, poor motion clarity. So when you're scrolling on this phone, especially when it's cold, you'll notice a lot of ghosting and image trailing, which just looks ugly, something that isn't present on OLED displays. Now, I probably sound like a bit of an OLED snob, and the reason I bring it up, and I know this is their most budget smartphone, but here we have the A16, which is like not much more expensive, but it's night and day how much better the display is on this phone. On the A16, we have a 1080p OLED 90Hz display, and this phone's like 30 quid more than this phone, so I don't know why they've cheaped out so much on the display. And I know the A16 is a higher end model, but it's last year's model. Imagine if they put the display from the A16 in the A07, it would have been such an upgrade. And the reason I say that is because, in my opinion, the display is the thing on a smartphone that you look at the most, and having an OLED display just really enhances the experience. So there's nothing inherently wrong with the display of the A07, but it's the fact that it's an IPS in 2025. So I've come here to a beach in Cornwall to talk about the camera system on the Samsung Galaxy A07. So as you can see, it has 2 cameras, but that is a little bit misleading. Much like the A16 where it had 3 cameras and one of the cameras was just a 2 megapixel macro, I'd say this is even worse. So the main sensor is a 50 megapixel shooter, which is pretty good for the price. My issue is with the second camera that they definitely just added to make it look like it has 2 cameras. The second sensor is a 2 megapixel sensor, and unlike the A16 where it used it as a macro camera, this is actually just a depth sensor, so you actually can't even shoot images using this sensor. It's literally just there to enhance the portrait mode. So as I said, the main sensor is 50 megapixels and takes pretty decent images. Here are some examples on screen. I'd say it's very Samsung, contrasty, very sharp, and from a distance, it's a very nice image. Obviously, this phone doesn't have a very big sensor, so it helps to have a lot of light in your image. But I think in good lighting conditions, the main camera is good. Thumbs up for me. For the price of this phone, I haven't got any issues with it. And I also went around and took some similar photos with my iPhone to compare. Here are the photos on screen now. I would say most people may actually think that the A07 from a distance takes better photos, because they're a bit more punchy, a bit more contrasty. They have a stronger sharpening filter than the iPhone. I guess it's all down to preference, but when you zoom in, the iPhone has more detail, more dynamic range. But I would say in challenging locations like today where we've got quite a low sun, it's all very contrasty, there's a lot of shadow. The iPhone does take better photos, mainly due to its better image processing. The A07 can crush the shadows and overexpose the highlights, which is rarely an issue with the iPhone. The A07 shoots 1080p 30 frames per second video, which does look good. I think it's got good dynamic range. It can look slightly over sharpened, but the main issue I have with the video is the same issue I had with the A16, and it's the fact that it doesn't have optical image stabilization. So the video can end up looking very shaky. So here's an example of what it looks like. And here's a comparison with my iPhone, which does have optical image stabilization, and it makes a massive difference. There's also a slow motion mode, which is always nice to have. Oh, I nearly got wet there. Here's an example of the quality. Obviously, it's not the highest quality and it's not the slowest slow motion, but I'm just impressed that this £100 phone has that feature. So this is what photos from the 8 megapixel front-facing camera looks like. I'd say they look pretty good. I've not really got any major complaints. One feature I am disappointed with is portrait mode. The fact that this phone has a dedicated camera for portrait mode, but the portrait mode photos look pretty rubbish. Here's an example on screen now. So I took a picture of my camera in front of me with a tripod, and the edge detection isn't great. Quite disappointing. I then waited for it to get dark outside so I could test the low light performance of the A07. It produces some okay looking low light photos, but I compared it to my iPhone 16 Pro Max, and obviously the iPhone produces some much better looking photos. the sensor in that phone is bigger. I'll put the comparison on screen now. It's basically a night and day difference, no pun intended. So in terms of performance, the Samsung A07 has a Helios G99 chip, which is actually the same chip as the A16 that we reviewed in my last video. And what that means is it scores about 720 single core, Geekbench 6 and 1800 multi-core, which is about a 50% improvement from last year, the A06. So this should be significantly quicker. And it is. Day-to-day tasks like browsing the web, scrolling through YouTube, TikTok, work seamlessly. I haven't really had any issues. You can also do some gaming. So here we are, I've tested a couple of games on this phone, starting off with Call of Duty Mobile, a game that I definitely have never played in my life. This actually runs perfectly. I actually think it's taking advantage of the 90 Hz display, which is nice to see. I then jumped into some Minecraft and that also was perfect. 60 FPS at least. And then we went on some Asphalt 8. That game's not very well optimized. I think we're only getting about 30 FPS. But yeah, you can definitely do some fairly decent gaming on this device. In terms of RAM, this version of the phone has 4 GB, but you can also get it with 6 or 8. I don't think that's needed. I think 4 GB of RAM pairs perfectly with the G99. I think if you were paying any more for RAM, you would be wasting your money. 4 seems to be absolutely fine. You can multitask. I've noticed a couple of stutters in the UI here and there, but nothing too major. So in terms of software, this currently has Android 15, which I know isn't the latest version of Android, but I'm pretty sure it's going to have Android 16 very soon. It's also got, I think it's called One UI 7, which is Samsung's skin on top of Android. I don't hate it. I remember back in the day I hated TouchWiz. It does seem a little bit more dialed back, which is good. I hate intrusive operating systems. And Samsung has promised 6 years of software updates. So you should be up to date. Oh, why does it have to be raining? So in conclusion, would I recommend picking up the Samsung Galaxy A07 in 2025? My honest answer is no, and the reason for that is I picked this up for £90, but I also picked up this for £90. This is the Samsung Galaxy A16, so this is last year's model, but it's technically a tier above the 07. And the reason I'd go with this is because this has a 90 Hz OLED panel, as well as an ultra-wide camera and a macro camera. And this has the same size 5000 mAh battery, similar software support, as well as the exact same Helios processor. So if I was going to pay the same amount of money for both these phones, I'd definitely go with this phone. So that would be my advice. Even though this is a really good phone for the money, there are better phones. I just really think the IPS screen lets this phone down. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do you think the A07 is a good phone to buy in 2025? Or do you recommend a different phone? Let me know in the comments. And if you have enjoyed, be sure to drop us a like and consider subscribing. I did lose my mic making this video. Luckily I had a spare one. That's very sad. Anyway, I'll see everyone in my next video.